OK, welcome back. Now we're going to talk Chelsea and what has been a rollercoaster few years for the club that has seen them go through troubled times to winning the Club World Cup. The author of a new book, Sanctioned, I'm delighted to say, is with us. The inside story of the sale of Chelsea FC. So thank you for joining us, Nick Purewal. I mean, goodness me, your book documents this huge change in the course of Chelsea's history. Let's just recap the events of Roman Abramovich then and the fact that he's obviously sold the club and the new owners have come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, it was quite clear that Abramovich's situation completely changed, and he was eventually sanctioned on the 10th of March, but he put the club up for sale on the 2nd of March. And then in that time, once he was sanctioned, the club was frozen, his assets were frozen. The government had to issue a temporary operating licence, and then a very public sale process and sort of fight for the club ensued. And so Chelsea had to condense a year's worth of work into 3 months to sell the club. So they were under extreme pressure, and if they hadn't met the 31st of May deadline in 2022, then the club would have folded. So there was extreme stress about the future of the club itself, and they managed to get the deal done.
And he left Chelsea. He almost sort of disappeared and no one had really heard from him. It was all a bit of a mystery, wasn't it? And of course, as part of the book, you got to interview him as well. I mean, how did it happen? How did you manage to secure the golden interview?
Well, I'd been working across the whole period of the sale as the Chelsea correspondent for the Press Association. So in that role, over time, I built relationships with his people. And I'd always sort of very lightly said, a very light touch, well, if you ever did decide to speak, of course, I'd be really keen to do that, but only very gently. And I just kept in touch with people across, obviously, after the sale. It was an extremely fraught time, and it was, dangerous for Roman Abramovich himself in many ways. And so really, in partly just sort of checking in with people, making sure they're still, OK, things are going OK, what's happening next for them. Eventually, we got around to talking about the fact that he may want to do something, and then we settled on the idea of a book.
Yes, it's a bit of a mystery to most of us, isn't it? Very private. Even when he owned Chelsea, you got to know his people, but obviously speaking to the man himself, it's quite hard to get through the people to get to the man to find out, I guess, what he's like as a person and as a character, and how was he with you?
Yeah, well, I think people have always said, and I think it's something that people more widely might not necessarily have been able to sort of get their head around almost, but he is quite shy and quite introverted, which is potentially unusual for somebody in his, so successful in business. But I think that's almost one of his strengths. And so he was that with me, but he was very open, and we met for the first time in Istanbul in January 2024, and I walked in, he shook me by the hand and said, my name's Roman Abramovich, pleased to meet you, and asked me anything. And so we sat down and we talked for between 4 and 5 hours, and really, once he got comfortable, it was a study in me staying out of his way, and I probably asked about as many questions, 4 or 5 questions in as many hours, because he was just ready to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, was he frustrated with what happened at Chelsea? I imagine probably upset with what happened. He obviously had a love for this club for such a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think really he's a real realist. So he was very phlegmatic about the whole thing, and he tends to want to look forward rather than back. And I think that's a very key trait in successful business people, isn't it? And so I think if pressed, he probably would have felt all of those things, but I think he felt there was an awful lot he had to deal with as well. So he probably didn't really have time to feel sort of frustrated with that overall.
And keeping himself safe was something else, of course, as you've mentioned there. And he was actually poisoned at one point as well, which he spoke to you about. What was that like, hearing that from him?
Well, I mean, it was remarkable. I think one of the things that is remarkable about him is that he doesn't seem to be afraid of anything, really. Because he's so phlegmatic and so calm, even in the situation when it was clear he had been poisoned. He was just trying to get on with the meetings he was trying to have to help the peace process with the Ukrainian delegation. So he put the club up for sale. They announced that the club was for sale on the 2nd of March, and that was the night where Chelsea played at Luton in the 5th round of the FA Cup. And after he'd had that phone call to tell his people to draft a statement, he flew from Turkey to Poland, and then drove into Ukraine, stayed in Kyiv, and it was that night that he was poisoned.
Wow. The sale went through after that. Todd Boehly and the consortium, of course, took over. You spoke to him about that as well, and how the club is now. What did he have to say about Todd and how Chelsea is now?
Yeah, Todd, I think the thing with Todd was that Abramovich's people, so Bruce Bucker, Marina Granovskaya and Rainback, ran the sale process. And I think they felt that Todd and his partners were the people who were most aligned in vision and approach with the Abramovich era itself. So I think that's one of the key reasons why they actually won out in the bidding war for Chelsea. And then meeting with Todd, it was fascinating because he was very generous with his time as well. We met in his office in London. And on the wall, there's 3 black and white, very arty pictures, lovely pictures. And one is the Lakers, one is Chelsea, and one is the Dodgers. And they're the 3 sort of sporting passions he has. And what he was saying was that over the time of being involved in the transformation of the Dodgers back to winning ways, winning the World Series twice, and certainly the second time, because they were able to have the parade in LA where 300,000 people turned out, it really only made him even more determined to, for things to be successful at Chelsea.
Gosh, there's 20 million questions I want to ask you, and I'm like, oh, where do I go next? And moving on from one to the other, I kind of want to know what's happened to the money that obviously the government are holding from the sale. Is that still just there being held, seized, I guess?
Well, it's frozen, and so it's frozen in the bank account where it cleared from the sale process, and so that's a Barclays UK bank account, which was the holding company for the bank account for the holding company that was linked to Chelsea at the time. And so it's still there, and obviously Abramovich's plan was always for that money to go to found an independent humanitarian foundation to benefit all victims of the conflict. But there's still a wrangle with the government. The government wants the money to be spent inside Ukraine. And the people who want to set up the foundation argue that that would limit its efficacy. And actually, if that money could be spent globally, then it could transform, it could change the face of humanitarian aid.
Because this is a lot of money we're talking about.
A lot of money, exactly. And it really is, I think the difficulty is, even now, if you tried to spend that money inside Ukraine, because it's still a live war zone, I mean, one of the things people have said was, you could spend all of that money on building 4 bridges, and then those bridges could be blown up the next day. But actually, if you think about all of the people who had to leave Ukraine for safety, refugees who've come across Europe, obviously we've taken a lot of people in the UK, haven't we? Lots of people in the UK have been very hospitable. Yeah. Ideally, those people should go back to Ukraine eventually, but they need funding to be able to, do all of the things that people at school age, to kind of sit all the Ukrainian exams and similar. But if they stay here and they sit, A levels and they go to university, they might very well never go home. But actually, it's in everyone's interest as well as their own to go back, hopefully, to Ukraine in the future. Absolutely.
Just finally, we know at the moment the club have just won the Club World Cup, haven't they? They're in a good place, having gone through this period of change and transition at the top and on the pitch as well, with the big squad they had and all these changes. Do you think the new owners are finally happy with where things are on the pitch?
Yeah, I think so. And I think certainly when we met in early February, when I met with Todd, he was saying that it was at that point that they really, for the first time, felt as though they had a settled off-field setup. And so it had taken them to that point to get settled. And I think, it's funny that, obviously slightly coincidental, but they've obviously gone on since then and won 2 trophies. And I think the Club World Cup, the win and the manner of it, beating PSG in the way they did, with guys like Cole Palmer coming to the fore and João Pedro settling so quickly and Liam Delap being such talent for the future. I think they're starting to get the blend they want, and I think the signs are encouraging.
Great. Look forward to reading the book Sanctioned, the inside story of the sale of Chelsea FC. Nick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.